John's eyes fluttered open, greeted not by the familiar sight of his cluttered bedroom but by a blinding, sterile white. A low hum vibrated through the floor, resonating deep within his chest. Disoriented, he pushed himself up, his head swimming. He was lying on a metallic table, cold and unforgiving beneath his thin pajamas. Around him bizarre contraptions blinked and whirred, their purpose utterly alien. Cables snaked across the ceiling, disappearing into walls that seemed to curve, in defiance of Euclidean geometry. This wasn't his apartment, this wasn't even Earth. Panic began to bubble up, a cold dread spreading through his limbs. Where was he? How did he get here? The last thing he remembered was microwaving a burrito and settling in for a cosmos marathon. Now he was surrounded by technology so advanced it was indistinguishable from magic, trapped in what could only be described as an alien operating theater. The cold, sterile air hinted at something vast and uncaring. He was a long way from home, smack dab in the middle of somebody else's galaxy, an alien empire, to be precise. From a darkened observation deck, Commander Xylar watched. The human, designated Subject 742, was proving problematic. Xylar's multifaceted eyes narrowed, focusing on the unsettlingly relaxed figure on the examination table. The Kryll were a species forged in the crucible of interstellar conflict. Their society was a symphony of calculated efficiency, every action dictated by logic and unwavering adherence to the prime directives. Spontaneity was a disease, individuality a weakness. And Subject 742, a walking, talking violation of every Kryll precept. Xylar adjusted the optical array, magnifying the image of the human. Its attire was particularly egregious. Loose, shapeless garments of some soft, pliable material. Pajamas, the translation matrix identified them as sleepwear. To appear before a Kryll officer, especially in such a vulnerable state, was an insult of the highest order. Disrespect dripped from every careless fold of the fabric. The Kryll armor was a symbol of their unwavering dedication to the collective and their readiness for battle. Pajamas spoke of leisure, comfort, self-indulgence. Xylar suppressed a chitinous shudder. Such concepts were alien. This human, this John, represented everything the Kryll stood against. His very existence was a challenge to their meticulously ordered universe. And Xylar, a commander of the Kryll fleet, found himself strangely intrigued. This was going to require careful observation and a lot of patience, something Xylar was not known for. The interrogation room was cold, sterile. John sat on a metal chair that offered all the comfort of a disgruntled stapler. Across from him, Commander Xylar and a hulking Kryll who introduced himself as Lieutenant. Zorgon stared with an intensity that could curdle milk. Subject 742, Xylar began, his voice a modulated drone. State your purpose. John leaned back, the chair creaking in protest. Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? Existentially speaking, or are we just talking about what I'm doing here? Which, let's be honest, I'm still trying to figure out myself. Zorgon's mandibles clicked audibly. Your flippancy is inefficient. We require a direct answer. John sighed dramatically. Okay, direct answer. My purpose? To not be interrogated by giant space bugs? Is that a good enough purpose for you guys? Xylar remained impassive. Your response is illogical. You were found unconscious. Within Kryll space, explain. Unconscious? John feigned surprise. Wow, really? I thought I was just napping. Kryll space, huh? Sounds exclusive. Did I need a reservation or something? Zorgon slammed a fist on the table, the metal groaning under the impact. You will cease your unevasive maneuvers. Your physiological readings indicate elevated levels of sarcasm. Elevated? John grinned. That's just my normal setting, buddy. You should see me when I'm trying to be charming. Xylar tilted his head, his multiple eyes blinking in a sequence that John guessed was the Kryll equivalent of a raised eyebrow. Charming? An irrelevant metric. We have analyzed your neural patterns. They are chaotic. Chaotic good, hopefully, John quipped. Look, guys, I'm just a simple man. I enjoy long walks on the beach, a good cup of coffee, and not being held captive by aliens with questionable fashion sense. Fashion sense is dictated by practicality, Zorgan growled, gesturing to his own armored carapace. Your attire is an affront. John glanced down at his pajamas. Hey, these are silk. Designer silk. Very practical for sleeping. Which, by the way, I was doing quite comfortably before I was rudely awakened. Xylar pressed a button on the console. Increase physiological analysis. Monitor for deception. A beam of light scanned John, analyzing his vitals. Pupil dilation, heart rate, perspiration, all within acceptable parameters for casual conversation, the computer announced in a monotone. Xylar's eyes narrowed further. Impossible. No sentient being could remain so unaffected under interrogation. Maybe I'm just really good at poker, John shrugged. Or maybe, just maybe, I have absolutely no idea what's going on, and I'm just trying to make the best of a really weird situation. Zorgan scoffed. A likely story. You will reveal your true purpose, human, or face the consequences. John raised his hands in mock surrender. All right, you got me. I'm, a secret agent sent here to steal your precious, space staplers. Yeah, that's it. Space staplers. Top secret technology. Very dangerous. Xylar stared at him unblinking. Space staplers? Yeah, for stapling things in space, John stammered, realizing he hadn't thought this through. The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the interrogation room. Then Xylar spoke, his voice laced with a hint of something John couldn't quite decipher. Fascinating. Continue. John soon discovered that nearly everything he did was cause for alarm. His morning routine, for instance, was met with utter bewilderment. The Kryll observed him with growing unease as he attempted to locate the designated nutrient processing unit, only to discover it was some kind of high-tech matter synthesizer that, according to the manual, could create anything from protein paste to synthetic alloys. Naturally, John bypassed all the pre-programmed options and tried to figure out how to make coffee. The resulting sputtering, hissing, and flashing lights sent the Kryll into a state of near panic. Commander Xylar arrived, flanked by Zorgan, just as John managed to coax a dark, fragrant liquid from the machine. What is the meaning of this disturbance? Xylar demanded, his voice tight. Are you attempting to sabotage the energy converter? John, bleary-eyed and desperate for caffeine, held up his mug. Sabotage? No. Just making a little wake-up juice. Want some? He offered the mug to Xylar, who recoiled as if presented with a biohazard. Wake-up juice? Zorgan boomed. Is this some kind of chemical weapon? Chemical weapon? John chuckled. Only if you consider caffeine a weapon, which, let's be honest, it totally is against sleepiness. He took a long sip, savoring the taste. Ah, that's the stuff. The Kryll exchanged confused glances. Their understanding of human behavior was clearly limited. It wasn't just the coffee either. John's general attitude towards their rigid social structure was a constant source of frustration. He questioned the Kryll's unwavering devotion to their leader, the grand exalted overseer, whom they apparently hadn't seen in person for several generations. He challenged the logic of their elaborate bureaucratic processes, which seemed designed to make even the simplest task an exercise in futility. So wait, John said during one particularly tense briefing. You're telling me you need 7 different forms, each approved by 3 different departments, just to get a new light bulb? Xylar's mandibles twitched. Efficiency is paramount. Each form ensures adherence to protocol. Right, John said, stifling a yawn. Because nothing says efficiency like endless paperwork. Back on Earth, we just buy a light bulb, takes like 5 minutes. Zorgan slammed his fist on the table again. Earthling, you dare question the Kryll way? John shrugged. Hey, I'm just saying maybe there's a better way. You guys are so busy filling out forms, you're missing out on all the, you know, fun. Fun? Zyler's eyes blinked rapidly. An irrelevant concept. Irrelevant? John raised an eyebrow. Says the guy who spends his days staring at spreadsheets. Come on, live a little. Loosen up, have some coffee. He offered the mug again, and again the Kryll recoiled. It was clear. John's very existence was an affront to everything the Kryll held dear. But little did they know the real chaos was yet to come. Tensions were definitely ratcheting up, like the pressure in a really good pressure cooker. The kind that makes amazing risotto, not explodes and covers your kitchen in sticky rice. Commander Zylar, looking like he'd just swallowed a particularly sour lemon, announced they would demonstrate the power of Kryll technology. He declared, with a dramatic flair that seemed almost theatrical, that they would unveil their most formidable weapon. Behold Earthling, Zylar proclaimed, leading John to a heavily guarded chamber. The dimensional disruptor. The device in the center of the room hummed with restrained energy, all polished metal and ominous blinking lights. It looked impressive. John had to give them that. Kryll technicians scurried around, making final adjustments with an almost religious fervor. This, Zyler said, his voice filled with grim satisfaction, is the culmination of centuries of Kryll scientific achievement. With this device, we can tear apart the very fabric of space-time. We can unravel dimensions, we can… John squinted, tilting his head. Uh-huh. Yeah. That's a really fancy espresso machine, isn't it? The silence that followed was thicker than week-old space sludge. Zylar's mandibles stopped twitching and his usually intense gaze faltered. Zorgan's jaw dropped open, revealing rows of surprisingly small, sharp teeth. The technicians froze, their multi-jointed fingers hovering over the controls. Espresso. Machine? Zylar finally sputtered, his voice barely a whisper. You dare to suggest that our dimensional disruptor is nothing more than a beverage preparation device? John shrugged, completely unfazed. Well, yeah, I've seen these before. Back on Earth, we have them in, like, every office. Makes a mean latte if you know how to use it. Although, he added, eyeing the complex array of buttons and nozzles, yours looks like a real top-of-the-line model. The Kryll stared at their ultimate weapon, their pride and joy, the device they believed could shatter reality itself, as if seeing it for the first time. The realization dawned on them, slow and horrifying. All those centuries of research, all those resources poured into its development, and it was just a coffee maker. John, trying to break the tension, figured he'd offer a peace offering, the best kind he knew. So, anyone want a cup? This thing looks like it could brew enough to fuel a small warship. He set to work, fiddling with the controls, ignoring the horrified stares of the Kryll technicians. He bypassed the dimensional destabilization matrix, rerouted the energy flow, and soon the machine was gurgling and hissing like a caffeinated dragon. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the chamber, a scent so alien and unexpected that it made the Kryll officers' sensory receptors overload. Soon, a massive vat of coffee was ready. John poured it into repurposed beakers, offering them to Zylar and Zorgan with a cheerful, complimentary wakey-wakey juice on the house. Zylar, still reeling from the revelation of his weapon's true purpose, eyed the dark liquid with extreme suspicion. Zorgan, on the other hand, was intrigued. He cautiously took a sip. His multifaceted eyes widened. He took another, and another. The caffeine hit the Kryll officers like a jolt from a malfunctioning deflector shield. Their rigid bodies began to twitch. Their mandibles vibrated at an alarming rate. Emotions previously suppressed by centuries of strict discipline surged to the surface. Zylar gasped, clutching his chest. I feel things. Unfamiliar things. What is this? This sensation? Is this happiness? Or is it existential dread? I cannot tell. Zorgan, meanwhile, started laughing, a loud, booming sound that echoed through the chamber, utterly inappropriate for a Kryll officer of his rank. He slapped Xylar on the back, nearly sending the commander sprawling. By the great Galactic, Grub, this is amazing. I feel alive. I want to dance, and maybe write poetry. To space slugs. Emboldened by the coffee's strange power, the Kryll started to, well, think. And thinking for a Kryll was a dangerous, unprecedented act. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs to outright questions, all buzzing with a newfound energy. Why do we have to wear these uncomfortable carapace polishers? One Kryll tech dared to ask. Another chimed in. And why can't we listen to, well, music? I think I heard a rhythm in the coffee machine. It was a full-blown cultural revolution brewing, and it smelled suspiciously of Arabica beans. The Kryll ranks began to fracture as individuality, that most alien of concepts, wormed its way into their collective consciousness. Kryll started modifying their uniforms, adding splashes of unauthorized color or rearranging their antennae in expressive ways. They started questioning the ancient Kryll laws, the very bedrock of their society, suggesting, maybe, just maybe, mandatory synchronized swimming isn't the best use of our time. Chaos erupted in the pristine corridors of the Kryll Command Center. Kryll officers, fueled by caffeine and burgeoning emotions, engaged in debates. Loud, passionate, debates filled with gesticulations and, dare I say, opinions. It was a far cry from the orderly execution of directives they were known for. Xylar, bless his rigid little heart, was trying to regain control. He barked orders, but his voice was drowned out by the cacophony of dissent. Discipline, order, we are Kryll, we do not feel, we obey. Now someone get me a regulation-sized cup of this coffee-like substance. His plea was met with blank stares and a chorus of, why, Commander, why should we obey? He watched in horror as his perfectly ordered world dissolved into a caffeinated, emotional free-for-all. His mandate, his purpose, everything he'd ever known was crumbling before his very multifaceted eyes, one slightly jittery Kryll at a time. Amidst the swirling chaos of emotional Kryll and philosophical debates, John found himself face to face with a very bewildered, very caffeinated Commander Xylar. Look, John began, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. I'm just a regular guy, okay? From Earth. He took a sip of his coffee, which by this point was probably more Kryll tears than actual brew. I like a good cup of joe just like the next fella. I never meant to cause all this. He gestured around at the pandemonium. This. My intentions weren't malicious, I swear. I was just trying to adapt, you know? Survive. Find a decent Wi-Fi, signal, maybe catch up on some sports scores. He shrugged, his pajamas somehow looking even more out of place amidst the Kryll revolution. The thing is, John continued, I wasn't supposed to be here. I got zapped by some faulty experimental device back home. 1 minute I'm microwaving a burrito, the next I'm waking up in your, brightly lit, geometrically challenging facility. He paused, offering Xylar a sympathetic look. So yeah, that's it. Regular guy, bad luck, really good coffee. Sorry for the intergalactic incident. Xylar, his antennae twitching erratically, stared at John. The initial fury hadn't dissipated entirely, but something had shifted. He saw the bewildered, almost apologetic look on John's face, and then glanced at the Kryll around him, arguing, laughing, feeling. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was something to this chaos. Perhaps the rigid order they had clung to for centuries had stifled them, made them blind to other possibilities. The Kryll, Xylar realized, were still Kryll. They were logical, methodical, but now they were also something more. They were Kryll with a hint of human spark. Very well, human, Xylar conceded, his voice retaining its usual clipped tone, though a hint of something flickered within it. Your coffee has initiated unforeseen consequences. But consequences are merely outcomes waiting to be analyzed and optimized. The Kryll, after a series of long debates and strategic meetings, punctuated by coffee breaks, decided to selectively adopt aspects of human culture. Efficiency was still paramount, of course, but now team-building exercises involved interpretive dance. Strategic war games were followed by mandatory relaxation sessions with soothing earth music, carefully curated to avoid anything too emotionally disruptive. And John? He became an ambassador of sorts. Not a formal one, mind you, more of a slightly bewildered consultant on all things human. His insights, delivered with a shrug and a sarcastic quip, proved surprisingly useful. He explained the intricacies of sarcasm, the appeal of reality television, and the proper way to wear socks with sandals, a fashion statement that the Kryll thankfully decided to forego. As the Kryll prepared a meticulously calibrated portal for John's return to Earth, ensuring optimal atmospheric conditions and minimal temporal distortion, naturally, John leaned against the wall, a mischievous glint in his eye. He took a final sip of Kryll-approved, ethically sourced, low-acidity coffee. "You know," he began casually, "about that misunderstanding with the dimensional disruptor, and how I just accidentally ended up here." Xylar, antennae twitching slightly, regarded him with a newfound curiosity. "Yes, human. The sequence of events has been thoroughly analyzed. The probability of such an occurrence was infinitesimally small, yet—" John chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "Well, let's just say I might have, stretched the truth a little, or, a lot." He pushed himself off the wall, a wide grin spreading across his face. "Truth is, I knew exactly what that thing was. Espresso machine, top of the line. Figured a little intergalactic chaos was just what I needed to spice things up. My life back on Earth was getting kinda dull." John gestured around at the bustling, slightly less regimented Kryll Command Center. "And look at you guys now. Interpretive dance, emotional breakthroughs, all thanks to a little caffeine and a carefully orchestrated misunderstanding. You're welcome." With a final wink, John stepped into the portal, leaving behind a slightly more chaotic, considerably more caffeinated, and undeniably more human alien empire. The Kryll, forever changed, had no idea that their revolution was sparked not by accident, but by a bored Earthling seeking a slightly more exciting Tuesday. Years drifted by, star systems wheeled in their cosmic dance, and the Kryll, well, they became a legend. Throughout the galaxy, they were known not just for their strategic prowess, but for something far more unexpected. They were famous for their unique, almost paradoxical blend of rigorous logic and unbridled emotion. And of course, their unparalleled devotion to coffee. Kryll roasted, Kryll brewed, Kryll appreciated coffee. Worlds away, one might hear tales of Kryll diplomats meticulously negotiating treaties one moment, then spontaneously breaking into synchronized dance-offs the next. Their approach to intergalactic relations became refreshingly bizarre. Instead of calculated power plays, they favored open-mic poetry slams and meticulously organized potlucks. It was all very confusing and surprisingly effective. And every year, on the anniversary of John's arrival, the Kryll celebrated Human Appreciation Day. It was a galaxy-wide holiday filled with questionable fashion choices, overly enthusiastic, attempts at stand-up comedy, and naturally an endless supply of coffee. The story of John the Earthling who, let's be honest, accidentally on purpose started a coffee-fueled revolution. It kind of proves something, doesn't it? That sometimes the biggest, craziest changes come from, well, the most utterly unexpected sources. A misplaced human, a misused espresso machine, a galaxy buzzing on caffeine. Who knew?